When I first saw the job posting, I thought it had to be a mistake. Nighttime church cleaner, $27 an hour, flexible hours, minimal supervision. Just keep the place tidy and respect the space. Those were the exact words in the description. No experience necessary, I didn't even need a resume. Just a background check, which I passed easily. I was broke, living in my car and losing hope one cold November. I would have mopped the floors of a meat locker if they paid me on time. So when the church secretary called me in for an interview the next morning, I was already in the parking lot before sunrise. The church was old, not haunted movie old, just tired. Stained glass dim with dust, cracked pavement in the lot, a big wooden door with iron hinges that groaned when opened. It was nestled between empty lots and silent fields, about 3 miles out of town. I'd never noticed it before, which seemed odd because I'd driven that stretch of road plenty of times. But some places, I guess, just want to stay hidden. The secretary, Martha, looked like someone who ran a food pantry and didn't take crap from anyone. She was nice, but firm. She led me through the building quickly. Main hall, offices, bathrooms, kitchen, all of it spotless. She told me the sanctuary was off limits. Locked every night, she said. Pastor's orders. That's where we keep the altar, sacred vessels, things that don't concern you. She handed me the keys. One was missing. You won't be needing the sanctuary anyway, she said, with a polite smile that felt too rehearsed. The job started that night. At first, it was peaceful. I mopped, I emptied bins, restocked the bathrooms. The building creaked like old bones, but nothing too weird. I played podcasts through one earbud to keep myself company and tried not to think too much about my life before this. The jobs I'd lost, the friends I no longer talked to, the nights I'd slept under overpasses. Working there felt oddly dignified. Quiet, steady, almost holy, in a strange way. But by the end of the first week, I noticed something strange. It began with sound, not loud, barely audible, but distinct. The sanctuary was locked always, but some nights I'd hear a voice inside, low, mournful, like someone muttering a prayer into their hands. At first I thought it was the wind, or maybe the pipes, but it didn't sound mechanical. It sounded human. Once I paused outside the door, pressed my ear against the wood. Someone, was whispering on the other side, and then it stopped. Dead silence. Not even breathing. When I asked Martha about it the next day, she stared at me a little too long before saying, "Old buildings settle. You'll get used to it." I didn't press her. I needed the money. But I started taking shorter breaks, watching the sanctuary door more often than I cleaned. A few nights later, I saw light under the door, flickering, like candlelight. When I returned 10 minutes later, it was gone. After that, I started having dreams, the kind that sit on your chest in the morning like a heavy wet coat. I'd see rows of pews in a room that stretched on forever, shadows shifting between the aisles, a figure standing at the altar, back turned, whispering something I couldn't quite hear. I never remembered the words, just the feeling they left behind, like someone had scraped the inside of my skull with a wire brush. Still, I showed up every night. The place grew colder, literally. It was as if the heat never reached the sanctuary wing. Even bundled in 2 jackets, I could see my breath in the corridor near the door. The mop water would freeze along the rim of the bucket. But the thermostat claimed everything was normal. I kept thinking, why hire someone to clean a church they're not allowed to enter fully? Why was that room sealed off like a tomb? One night, just after I finished cleaning the bathrooms, I passed the sanctuary door and stopped. It was open, just an inch, just enough. No light, no sound, but the scent, like burned incense and something older, like mildew and rot. A strange mix of reverence and decay. I stepped forward, heart pounding. And that's where everything started to go wrong. I don't remember making the decision to go inside. My hand just moved, like it had its own logic, like it had already made the choice and the rest of me was just catching up. The door creaked open slowly. heavier than it should have been. Cold air rushed out, thick with the smell of old stone, ash, and wax that had burned too long. It didn't feel like opening a room. It felt like breaking a seal. The sanctuary was dark, lit only by a faint blue glow spilling in through the stained glass windows. The moon hung behind the glass, fractured into reds and purples across the pews. Everything inside looked untouched, too clean, like no one had ever been in here or like someone came in nightly to make it perfect. But it wasn't me. There were 20 pews, split down the center by a long aisle. At the end, the altar stood on a raised platform. A large wooden crucifix hung above it, but even in the dim light, something about it was wrong. The figure of Christ looked too lifelike, the arms too tense, the head tilted just a bit too far toward me. The shadows felt off too, like they lagged slightly behind my movement. I walked slowly down the aisle, barely breathing. Each step echoed far louder than it should have, like the acoustics weren't following normal physics. I stopped about halfway down and sat in a pew. Silence, and then a whisper. One word, so soft it brushed the inside of my ear like warm breath. Stay. I whipped around. No one behind me. No one at all. But the whisper didn't come from behind. It came from above. I looked up at the crucifix again. The head was turned, looking straight at me. My heart thumped like a hammer, but I didn't move. I couldn't. Not even when I wanted to. The whisper came again, this time from all sides. Stay. And then something shuffled beneath the altar, a sound like dragging feet over dry stone, slow, deliberate. Then I saw the candlelight, a single flame lit behind the altar. No one had entered. There were no doors, just a heavy curtain behind the pulpit, which now began to move, and not from wind, but as if someone was standing behind it, breathing. I should have run, but something deeper than fear kept me there, like I had been expected, like this room had been waiting to exhale me into it for years. The curtain parted slightly. Behind it, I saw a figure. Not human, not exactly. Its shape was wrong. Too long in the limbs, too narrow in the torso. Like a man stretched through suffering. It was wearing a black robe, or maybe it was just darkness clinging to it like a second skin. I couldn't see its face. Only a glint where eyes should have been. And then, it spoke. Do you know why you're here? The voice was wrong. Too deep, like it resonated through the wood, through the stone, through my bones. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My jaw was clenched shut. You opened the door. That makes you ours. The sanctuary pulsed, literally pulsed. The walls exhaled. The air grew thick like I was underwater. I stumbled backward, finally breaking free of whatever invisible hook had kept me there. I turned and bolted down the aisle, heart roaring in my ears. But the door I had entered through was gone. It wasn't shut. It wasn't broken. It simply wasn't there anymore. There was only more pews, more darkness, an endless stretch of shadow that had eaten the threshold. I turned back. The figure was gone, but the whispers were louder now. Dozens of voices, layered, praying, crying, laughing. Some of them spoke in tongues I'd never heard. One of them spoke in my own voice. And then something moved beneath the pews, something fast. I felt it pass under me like a current and brushing the back of my legs. I sprinted up the center aisle toward where I thought the altar had been. Maybe there was another way out, a servant's door, anything. But I reached a wall. A blank, seamless wall where the altar had been. Where Christ had once hung, there was now a mirror. But the reflection wasn't mine. It was me, but grinning, eyes hollow, mouth stretched wider than it should go, wearing my uniform, holding my mop, and behind that version of me was the figure. Its hands were on my shoulders. I blinked. The mirror cracked. A sound like a choir in reverse filled the room. Hymns unsung, pulled back into throats. I collapsed to the ground, clutching my head. Something was crawling behind my eyes. Then, silence. When I looked up again, I was in the hallway. Outside the sanctuary, door shut, locked, just like before. The mop bucket was beside me, my keys on the floor. The building was warm again. The only proof I had that anything had happened was the smear of black wax across my hands, and the faint smell of rot on my clothes.